Bright stars shone against the darkness of space as the UES Valiant moved slowly through the unknown region. Captain Susan Mitchell stood on the bridge of the ship. At 42 years old, she was the youngest person ever to command a ship that could travel between stars. Her face showed years of hard work and many challenges overcome. The Valiant was humanity's newest and best ship. Its mission was to meet aliens from a faraway place who had sent signals to Earth. Susan looked at the main screen that showed the endless stars. She felt the weight of her duty. The ship carried 200 crew members. All of them depended on her to keep them safe. This mission was important. If they succeeded, humans would make their first peaceful contact with an advanced alien race. "Captain, I'm getting something," said Lieutenant Alan Garcia from his station. He was the communications officer, responsible for all messages to and from the ship. "It looks like a signal from the Zaxari fleet." Susan straightened her uniform jacket. "Put it on screen, Lieutenant." The main screen changed. Now it showed a tall, blue-skinned alien. It had many eyes arranged in a line down its long head. Alien wore what looked like armor made of a shiny material. "I am High Commander Vexorn of the Zaxari Imperium," the alien said. Its voice sounded rough through the translation system. "Your ship has entered our space without permission." Susan stepped forward. "I am Captain Susan Mitchell of the United Earth ship Valiant. We come in peace. We wish to establish friendly relations between our worlds." The alien's upper eyes narrowed. "Peace? The Zaxari do not make friends with lesser species. We either conquer them or ignore them. You seem too weak to be worth conquering." Susan kept her face calm, but she felt anger rise inside her. "Perhaps you should not judge us so quickly, Commander. Humans may surprise you." "Is that so?" The alien leaned closer to the screen. "Our sensors show your ship has few weapons. We challenge you, Earth Captain, to prove your worth. If you succeed, we might consider your species worth talking to. If you fail," the alien's mouth parts moved in what might have been a smile, "you will not like what happens if you fail." The screen went dark. Susan turned to her crew. They all looked worried. "Security report," she said firmly. Security Chief Frank Delgado looked up from his console. His dark eyes were serious. 3 warships, Captain. Each one has 5 times the weapons we do." Susan nodded slowly. Her mind was already working on a plan. "Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them about our situation. And prepare all systems." First Officer Diane Powell moved to stand beside Susan. "What are you thinking, Captain?" she asked quietly. "I'm thinking the Zaxari have made a big mistake," Susan replied. "They think we're weak because our ship isn't covered in weapons. They've judged us by their standards, not understanding who we really are." "What do we do?" Diane asked. Susan turned to address the entire bridge crew. "Throughout history, humans have faced enemies who were stronger, faster, and better armed. And yet, here we are, traveling among the stars. Do you know why?" She looked at each crew member in turn. "Because when pushed, humans don't break. We adapt. We find a way to survive and win, no matter the odds." She walked to the center of the bridge. "Lieutenant Garcia, open a channel to the Zaxari flagship." The screen lit up again, showing High Commander Vexorn. "We accept your challenge," Susan said simply. The alien seemed surprised. "You do not wish to know what the challenge involves?" "First," Susan smiled slightly, "it doesn't matter. Whatever test you set, we will meet it." "Bold words from a fragile species," Vexorn said. "Very well. There will be 3 trials. First, your ship must navigate through the Kessler Maze, an asteroid field with unpredictable gravity. Second, you will face a tactical battle simulation. Third, you and I will fight in personal combat." Susan heard gasps from her crew, but she kept her eyes on the alien commander. "And when we succeed in all 3 trials, the Zaxari will recognize humanity as equals and establish diplomatic relations. Correct?" Vexorn made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. "If you somehow succeed, yes. But no species has ever passed all 3 trials. Then we will be the first. Susan said. "Send us the coordinates for the first trial. We will be ready." As the transmission ended, Science Officer Eric Summers approached Susan. "Captain, I've been analyzing their communications. The Zaxari are broadcasting this to their entire empire. They're treating this as entertainment." Susan's eyes hardened. "So they want a show? Then let's give them one they'll never forget." She turned to her navigation officer. "Lieutenant Washington, plot a course to these coordinates." Kevin Washington, the youngest officer on the bridge at just 28 years old, nodded. "Course plotted, Captain. The Kessler maze is about 6 hours, away at our best speed." "Then we have 6 hours to prepare," Susan said. "Dr. Price, I want you to analyze all available data on Zaxari physiology. Find weaknesses. Lieutenant Chen, work with Security Chief Delgado on strategies for the tactical simulation. And Lieutenant Washington, run every simulation we have on navigating asteroid fields with gravity anomalies." As her crew rushed to their tasks, Susan stood alone for a moment, looking at the stars. The Zaxari thought they were setting up humans for humiliation. They expected fear, or perhaps foolish bravery that would lead to defeat. What they didn't understand was that humanity hadn't reached the stars by backing down from challenges. Every step from Earth to the stars had been filled with problems that seemed impossible to solve. But humans had solved them, one by one. "They have no idea who they're dealing with," Susan said quietly to herself. Then she turned and joined her crew in preparing for the challenges ahead. The Zaxari were about to learn a valuable lesson about underestimating humans. The 6 hours passed quickly as the crew of the Valiant prepared for the challenges ahead. The bridge was busy with activity. Captain Susan Mitchell watched her people work with pride. They were scared, but they kept working. That was what humans did best when faced with danger. First Officer Diane Powell approached Susan with a datapad. "Captain, we've received the full details of the 3 trials from the Zaxari." Her face looked worried as she handed over the pad. Susan read through the information carefully. The first challenge was to navigate through the Kessler maze, a dangerous field of asteroids with strange gravity patterns. Ships 3 times the size of the Valiant had been lost there. The second challenge was a battle simulation that would test their tactical thinking. The third challenge was the worst. Susan would have to fight the Zaxari commander in personal combat. "They've designed these trials to show off their strengths and target our weaknesses," Susan said, "just as I expected." Lieutenant Kevin Washington looked up from his navigation station. "Captain, I've been studying the Kessler maze. The asteroids don't move in normal ways. The gravity pulls them in strange patterns that change without warning." "Can we navigate through it?" Susan asked directly. Kevin's young face was serious. "It will be very hard, but I think it's possible. If we modify our sensors to detect the gravity changes a few seconds before they happen, we might be able to react in time." Susan nodded. "Make it happen, Lieutenant." Security Chief Frank Delgado spoke next. "About the combat challenge, Captain. The Zaxari are twice as strong as humans. Their outer shell is harder than our bones. If you fight their commander, you'll be at a big disadvantage." "Every opponent has a weakness, Chief," Susan replied. "We just need to find it." Science Officer Eric Summers cleared his throat. "Captain, I've discovered something important. The Zaxari are sending our whole challenge across all their communication channels. This isn't just a test for us. It's entertainment for them. They want their whole empire to watch us fail." Susan's eyes narrowed. "So they want to humiliate us in front of an audience." She stood up straight. "They've made another mistake. They think putting us on display will make us nervous. Instead, it gives us a chance to show everyone exactly what humans are capable of." She pressed a button on her chair. "All hands, this is the captain speaking. The Zaxari think we are weak. They've challenged us to 3 trials, expecting us to fail in front of their entire empire. What they don't understand is that humanity didn't reach the stars by giving up when things got difficult." Susan's voice grew stronger. "For thousands of years, humans have faced challenges that seemed impossible. We've survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters. Each time we've come back stronger. The Zaxari think they know what we can do. Let's show them how wrong they are." As her crew returned to their work with new energy, Susan opened a private channel to Diane. Contact Earth Command again. Request all available information on Zaxari biology and society. If we're going to beat them, we need to understand them better than they understand us. On the main Zaxari ship, High Commander Vexorn watched the human vessel on his screen. Such a small, weak-looking ship, he said to his second-in-command. Yet they haven't tried to run away. Their bravery would be impressive if it weren't so foolish. His second-in-command made a clicking sound of agreement. The betting pools are growing quickly, Commander. Everyone in the Empire expects to see these humans humbled. And they will, Vexorn replied, his mouth parts moving in a smile. This will teach any other new species not to challenge the Zaxari. Neither of them noticed the small probe that the Valiant had quietly sent out. It was now scanning their ship's systems, collecting valuable information. Back on the Valiant, Dr. Nathan Price, the ship's doctor, had been studying the Zaxari biology. He brought his findings to Captain Mitchell. Captain, I've found something interesting. The Zaxari have a hard outer shell, but the joints where the pieces connect are sensitive. They also have many eyes, which gives them good side vision, but poor depth perception directly in front of them. Susan looked at the doctor's data with interest. Good work, Doctor. This could be useful for the combat challenge. The ship's alarm sounded. Lieutenant Garcia looked up from his station. Captain, we're approaching the Kessler Maze. The Zaxari ships are waiting for us. Susan straightened her uniform. On screen. The main screen showed a chaotic field of floating rocks. Ahead of them, the rocks moved in strange patterns, sometimes suddenly changing direction. Beyond the maze, 3 large Zaxari ships waited. A message came through. It was Vexorn. Captain Mitchell, I'm surprised you actually came. Many species choose to surrender, rather than attempt the maze. It will be interesting to see how long your ship survives. Susan smiled calmly. We're ready for your challenge, Commander. In fact, we're looking forward to it. Vexorn's many eyes blinked in surprise. Very well. Enter the maze when you're ready. If you somehow make it through, we'll be waiting on the other side for the second trial. As the communication ended, Susan turned to her bridge crew. Stations, everyone. Lieutenant Washington, take us in. Kevin's hands moved confidently over his controls. Course set, Captain. Entering the maze in 3, 2, 1. The Valiant moved forward into the dangerous asteroid field. Susan sat in her captain's chair, looking calm. Inside, her mind was racing, planning for each challenge ahead. On the Zaxari observation ship, Vexorn and his officers watched the small human vessel enter the maze. They'll be destroyed within minutes, one officer predicted, but Vexorn wasn't so sure anymore. There was something about these humans, something in the Earth captain's confident manner that made him uneasy. For the first time, he wondered if perhaps he had underestimated them. The first challenge had begun, and Captain Susan Mitchell was determined to show the Zaxari exactly what happened when someone challenged Earth's captain. The Kessler maze spread out before the Valiant like a deadly trap. Huge rocks moved in strange patterns, sometimes speeding up or changing direction without warning. From the Zaxari observation ship, High Commander Vexorn watched with his officers, sure that the human ship would soon be destroyed. Their ship design is too stiff, he said. Our ships can bend and flex with the gravity forces. Theirs will break apart. Inside the Valiant, Captain Susan Mitchell sat calmly in her chair. She trusted her navigator completely. Lieutenant Kevin Washington's hands moved quickly over the controls, his young face serious with focus. Gravity shift coming from the left, he called out. Adjusting thrusters now. Susan nodded. Use the modified shields, Lieutenant Summers. Eric Summers had worked all night to change the ship's shields. Instead of just blocking impacts, they now moved with the gravity waves, using the energy to help push the ship forward. As the Valiant entered deeper into the maze, Kevin called out warnings and Susan gave quick orders. The crew worked together perfectly. A large asteroid suddenly changed course, heading straight for the ship. Hard to starboard, Susan ordered. Kevin turned the ship sharply. The asteroid missed them by meters. That was close, Diane Powell said quietly. Susan smiled. But not close enough to hit us. Keep going, Lieutenant Washington. The Valiant didn't just survive the maze, it danced through it. Using the modified shields and Kevin's amazing navigation skills, they finished the course faster than any ship before them. On the Zaxari ship, there was complete silence. Impossible, Vexorn hissed. They must have cheated. His science officer looked uncomfortable. No signs of cheating, Commander. They just adapted their technology in ways we didn't expect. Vexorn's many eyes narrowed in anger. The second challenge will not be so easy for them. The Valiant docked with the Zaxari station where the second challenge would take place. This challenge was a battle simulation designed to test tactical thinking. The Zaxari thought humans would fail because the simulation was based on their own battle strategies. Susan chose Security Chief Frank Delgado and Tactical Specialist Lieutenant Laura Chen to lead the team for this challenge. They studied the simulation carefully before it began. They think in straight lines, Laura said, pointing to the attack, patterns. Each move follows the one before it in a fixed order. Frank nodded. Which means we can disrupt their whole plan by hitting these key points first. When the simulation started, the Zaxari watched in growing shock as the humans used tactics they had never seen before. The humans pretended to retreat, then attacked from unexpected directions. They gave up small advantages to win bigger ones seconds later. The simulation ended with another human victory. The Zaxari officers couldn't believe what they were seeing. Vexorn was now very angry. The final challenge cannot be won through clever technology or unusual tactics, he growled. Physical combat will show their true weakness. Back on the Valiant, Dr. Nathan Price approached Susan with worry in his eyes. Captain, the final challenge is too dangerous. Even with a strength-enhancing suit, a Zaxari warrior could kill you with one hit. Susan looked at the information about Zaxari biology. Every species has weaknesses, Doctor, even ones with hard outer shells. She pointed to part of the report. Their joints, where the shell pieces connect, are sensitive to certain vibrations, right? Dr. Price nodded slowly. Yes, but... And their many eyes give them good side vision, but poor depth perception directly in front of them? That's true, but Captain... Susan smiled confidently. Sometimes the biggest advantage is when your opponent thinks you're weaker than you really are. Now, help me put this sonic device from your medical equipment into my combat glove. The doctor still looked worried, but he did as she asked. Susan tested the modified glove. When activated, it sent out sound waves at a specific frequency, one that would affect the Zaxari's sensitive joints. Lieutenant Garcia called from his station. Captain, the Zaxari are sending a message. They're ready for the final challenge. Susan nodded. Tell them I'm on my way. She turned to her first officer. Diane, you have the ship. If anything happens to me... Nothing's going to happen to you, Diane interrupted. You're going to win, and then we'll establish proper diplomatic relations with these arrogant aliens. Susan smiled. That's the plan. She headed to the shuttle bay, where a small ship waited to take her to the Zaxari flagship for the combat challenge. The Zaxari combat arena was huge, with thousands of aliens watching from viewing areas around the sides. Susan entered wearing only the light protective gear allowed by the rules. It gave her some extra strength, but not much. Across from her stood Vexorn. He was nearly 8 feet tall, his shell armor shining under the bright lights. Your determination is impressive, he said loudly for the audience to hear, but it will not help you now. Susan looked calm. Before we start, I want to confirm something. The terms of our challenge say that if I win, the Zaxari will recognize humans as worthy of diplomatic relations. Is that correct? You will not win, so it doesn't matter, Vexorn replied. But yes, those were the terms. Susan nodded. Good. I wanted to make sure everyone watching understands what's at stake. The combat began. Vexorn attacked quickly, his huge arms swinging with enough force to break bones. Susan moved fast, dodging each attack by just enough. The audience roared as she escaped death by inches. "Stand still and accept your defeat with dignity," Vexorn taunted her. But Susan wasn't fighting to win by force. She was watching Vexorn carefully, learning his movement patterns and looking for the perfect moment to strike. After several minutes of avoiding his attacks, Susan suddenly changed her strategy. Instead of backing away, she moved toward him, tucking under his arm and pressing her gloved hand against the joint where his arm connected to his body. The modified glove sent out the sonic frequency. Vexorn's right side froze up, his mouth parts clicking in pain and surprise. "What trick is this?" he hissed. "Not a trick," Susan replied calmly. "Knowledge. You challenged us without learning about us first. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our physical power. It's our ability to adapt." The final challenge had begun, and Captain Susan Mitchell was about to teach the Zaxari a lesson they would never forget. The combat arena was silent as Captain Susan Mitchell faced the much larger High Commander Vexorn. The Zaxari leader was stunned that his right arm wasn't working properly. He didn't understand how this small human could affect him this way. "You will pay for this," Vexorn growled, attacking again with his left arm. Susan moved carefully, staying just out of reach. She continued to speak in a calm voice. "For thousands of years, humans had to overcome stronger predators and harsher environments. We survived because we learned to study our opponents and find their weaknesses." She ducked under another wild swing and pressed her gloved hand against the joint where Vexorn's leg met his body. Again, the sonic device activated. The Zaxari commander's leg buckled, and he stumbled. The watching Zaxari were completely silent now. No one had ever seen their mighty commander in trouble during combat. "You broadcast this challenge across your empire to embarrass us," Susan continued, her voice carrying to the audience. "But what they're seeing instead is that humanity doesn't need overwhelming strength to win. We observe, we learn, we find the exact pressure points, both physical and psychological." Susan struck again, this time targeting the joint between Vexorn's neck and shoulder. The big alien staggered back, clearly in pain. "You could have approached us as equals," Susan said. "Instead, you chose to treat us as entertainment." With a final, precise strike to a sensitive joint, the mighty Zaxari commander fell to his knees, unable to stand. Susan stood over him, not celebrating her victory but looking calm and dignified. She looked up at the shocked audience. "Let this be humanity's introduction to the Zaxari people. We prefer friendship to conflict, cooperation to control. But make no mistake, we will not be bullied, underestimated, or dismissed." She extended her hand to the fallen commander. "Your choice, High Commander. A new beginning between our peoples? Or a very public lesson in humility?" For a long moment, Vexorn stared at her offered hand. The entire arena was silent, waiting for his decision. Then, slowly, he reached up and took her hand. "The human captain has won the challenge," he announced, his voice echoing through the arena. "As agreed, the Zaxari recognize humanity as worthy of diplomatic relations." A murmur ran through the watching crowd. This was unprecedented. No species had ever beaten all three Zaxari challenges. Susan helped Vexorn to his feet. "I look forward to establishing a productive relationship between our peoples, Commander." Back on the Valiant, the crew waited nervously for news of their captain. When the communication system activated and showed Captain Mitchell standing unharmed next to Vexorn, they erupted in cheers. "She did it!" Lieutenant Garcia shouted. "She actually beat him!" First Officer Diane Powell smiled widely. "Did you ever doubt her?" The next day, Susan sat in her ready room, reviewing reports. The door chimed. "Enter," she called. "Science." Officer Eric Summers came in, looking excited. "Captain, you won't believe what's happening. Since our challenge with the Zaxari, we've received communication requests from 12 different alien species in this sector of space. They all want to establish diplomatic relations with Earth." Susan raised her eyebrows. 12? Eric nodded. "Word travels fast. The Zaxari are a major power in this region. When we beat their challenges, everyone took notice. The Nelvari Union is particularly eager to meet with us. Apparently, They've had conflicts with the Zaxari for centuries. Interesting, Susan said. Prepare a response to each request. We'll need to coordinate with Earth Command for full diplomatic missions, but we can begin preliminary discussions. Yes, Captain. Eric hesitated at the door. There's something else. High Commander Vexorn has requested to come aboard the Valiant. He says he wants to discuss a formal alliance between our peoples. Susan looked surprised. An alliance? That's more than we hoped for. Later that day, Susan waited in the docking bay as the Zaxari shuttle arrived. High Commander Vexorn stepped out, accompanied by 2 other Zaxari officials. His posture was different now, less arrogant, more respectful. Captain Mitchell, he greeted her, making a formal gesture that Susan had learned was reserved for equals in Zaxari culture. Thank you for allowing us aboard your vessel. You're welcome aboard the Valiant, High Commander, Susan replied, returning the gesture correctly. As they walked toward the meeting room, Vexorn spoke quietly. Our researchers have been studying your species since our encounter. Your history is fascinating. So much conflict, yet so much progress born from it. We learn from our mistakes, Susan replied, sometimes painfully. As do we, it seems. Vexorn's mouth parts moved in what Susan now recognized as a sign of respect. For 10,000 years, the Zaxari have met no species that could stand against us. We became complacent. Complacency is dangerous for any civilization, Susan observed. Indeed. Vexorn paused before entering the meeting room. The Zaxari Council has authorized me to propose a formal alliance with Earth. Not as superior and inferior, but as equals. Susan smiled. That is exactly what we hoped for, High Commander. The meeting lasted for hours as they discussed the details of cooperation between their peoples. When it was over, Susan walked Vexorn back to his shuttle. There is one thing I must know, the Zaxari commander said. How did you know about the sensitivity of our joints to sonic frequencies? That information is not widely known outside our species. Susan smiled slightly. As I said, humans are very good at studying and learning. Your medical database wasn't as well protected as your weapon systems. For the first time, Vexorn made a sound that Susan recognized as laughter. Remind me never to underestimate you again, Captain Mitchell. That would be wise, Commander, Susan replied with a smile. As the Zaxari shuttle departed, First Officer Diane Powell joined Susan in the observation lounge. Earth Command is very pleased with the outcome, Diane reported. They're sending a full diplomatic team. Until they arrive, we're authorized to continue preliminary negotiations with all interested species. Susan nodded, looking out at the stars. When we left Earth, our mission was to explore and make peaceful contact with new civilizations. I don't think anyone expected our first contact to start with a challenge and end with multiple alliance offers. It just proves something we've always known, Diane said with a smile. Never challenge an Earth captain unless you're prepared to regret it. Susan laughed. Indeed. Now let's prepare for our next meeting. The Nelvari representatives will be arriving in 2 hours, and I want to know everything about them before they get here. We've made a strong first impression in this part of space. Let's make sure we build on it. The Valiant continued its mission, no longer just an exploration vessel, but now the center of new diplomatic relations between humanity and multiple alien civilizations. And it had all begun because someone had challenged Earth's captain and promptly regretted it. 3 weeks had passed since Captain Susan Mitchell's victory over High Commander Vexorn. The UES Valiant remained in Zaxari space, now serving as Earth's temporary embassy. Susan sat in the newly created diplomatic room, looking at reports from Earth Command. Earth is sending 5 more ships, she told First Officer Diane Powell. They'll arrive in 2 months. Until then, we're the official representatives of humanity in this sector. Diane nodded. A big responsibility, but I think we're handling it well, Susan smiled. Thanks to the crew. Everyone has stepped up admirably. Indeed, many crew members had taken on new roles. Lieutenant Alan Garcia now led a team working on better translation systems. Lieutenant Laura Chen was teaching human tactical theory to interested Zaxari officers. Even Dr. Nathan Price had established a medical exchange program with the Nelvari healing specialists. The door chimed, and Lieutenant Kevin Washington entered. "Captain, the representatives from the Tarial Confederacy have arrived? They're waiting in the shuttle bay." "Thank you, Lieutenant," Susan said, standing up. "You did amazing work with the Zaxari Navigation Challenge. Would you like to join the diplomatic team for this meeting?" Kevin looked surprised but pleased. "I'd be honored, Captain." Susan, Diane, and Kevin walked to the shuttle bay where the newest alien delegation waited. The Tarials were different from the Zaxari, smaller with silver skin and 4 arms. Their leader stepped forward. "Captain Mitchell," the Tarial said in a melodic voice, "I am High Minister Valeron. Your victory over the Zaxari has become legendary throughout our sector. We are honored to meet you." Susan greeted them with the formal Tarial gesture she had studied. "The honor is ours, High Minister. Welcome aboard the Valiant." As they walked to the meeting room, Valeron asked, "Is it true that you were the first species to ever complete all 3 Zaxari challenges?" "Yes," Susan replied. "Though I believe our success had less to do with superior ability and more to do with the Zaxari underestimating us." "A mistake they won't make again," Valeron said. "Nor will any other species in this sector. That is actually why we're here." In the meeting room, maps of the sector appeared on the main screen. Valeron pointed to different star systems. For centuries, the Zaxari have dominated this region of space. Many species feared them. Some paid tribute to avoid conflict. Others, like us, maintained uneasy neutral relations. "And now?" Susan asked. "Now everything has changed," Valeron said. "Your victory has shown that the Zaxari are not invincible, but more importantly, the alliance you formed with them afterward has shown a new way forward. The Zaxari are actually beginning to trade and cooperate with other species instead of threatening them." Susan nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes it takes an outsider to change established patterns." "Exactly," Valeron agreed, "which is why the Tarial Confederacy wishes to propose a mutual defense and trade agreement with Earth. We believe your people have much to offer our region of space, not just technologically, but culturally." Later that day, Susan met with High Commander Vexorn, who now visited the Valiant regularly. They walked through the ship's garden section, which had been designed to showcase plants from Earth. "Another diplomatic request?" Vexorn asked when Susan told him about the Tarials. "Yes," Susan replied. "That makes 14 species in total now." Vexorn's mouth parts moved in what Susan now knew was a smile. "Not surprising. Your victory changed everything here." "Our victory changed things," Susan corrected him. "Your willingness to honor the terms of the challenge and form an alliance with us was just as important." Vexorn stopped to look at a flowering plant. "This is beautiful. What is it called?" "A rose," Susan answered. "It's a symbol of many things on Earth. Beauty, love, sometimes even war." "One plant with many meanings," Vexorn observed. "Like your species, Captain Mitchell. When we first met, I thought humans were simple and weak. Now I see you are complex and remarkably adaptable." Susan smiled. "Most species are more complex than they first appear, Commander. That's a lesson worth learning." "Indeed," Vexorn agreed. "I have news from the Zaxari Council. They have approved a complete cultural exchange program with Earth. We wish to learn more about your history, art, and philosophy. And in return, we will share ours with you." "That's wonderful news," Susan said. "Cultural understanding is the foundation of lasting peace." That evening, Susan held a dinner for all the alien representatives currently aboard the Valiant. The ship's mess hall had been transformed into a reception area, with foods from various worlds carefully prepared by the kitchen staff. As Susan looked around the room, she felt a deep sense of pride. Zaxari officers were talking with Nelvari healers. Tarial scientists were exchanging ideas with human engineers. Species that had barely communicated before were now building relationships. Lieutenant Garcia approached her. "Message from Earth Command, Captain. They've reviewed our reports and diplomatic progress. They're very pleased. They've also approved your recommendation." Susan smiled. "Good. Please tell Lieutenant Washington." Minutes later, she called for everyone's attention. "I have an announcement to make," she said. "Earth Command has approved the creation of a permanent diplomatic station in this sector. The station will be named Unity, representing our hope for the future relationships between all our peoples." The aliens responded with their various forms of approval, clicks, hums, and other sounds. "Furthermore," Susan continued, "Lieutenant Kevin Washington has been promoted to commander and will oversee the navigation aspects of the station's construction." Kevin looked shocked as everyone congratulated him. Later, as the reception was ending, High Commander Vexorn approached Susan one last time. "When we first challenged you, Captain Mitchell, we expected to teach humanity a lesson in humility. Instead, you taught us one." Susan nodded. "That's often how true learning works. Commander, we teach each other." As Susan watched the various alien representatives leave the Valiant, she thought about how differently this mission could have ended. If she had declined the Zaxari challenge, or if she had humiliated Vexorn after defeating him, the outcome would have been very different. Instead, humanity had found new allies and friends among the stars, and it had all started because someone had challenged Earth's captain and regretted it instantly.